Hello and welcome. My name is Odelia and I'm your host. Today I'm going to be joined by author Anna Parfa, and we're going to be talking about your inner child and how we can heal our inner child. How does our inner child show up as wounded? And we'll be talking a little bit about grief as well, and what misconceptions there are around grief and how we experience grief. We'll also be talking about the book that Anna has recently released called Inner Child Recovery. This book is going to be the book that we're going to do in the book club. We have some great bonuses, so check out the show notes, and I really hope that you enjoy this show. So I'll hand it over to Anna. So hello and welcome to the show, Anna. So glad that you could join us today. I'm very excited to talk about the topic of inner child healing. I will go ahead and let you introduce yourself. I normally let the guests introduce themselves, so over to you.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. And I'm Anna Parfa. I'm from Sweden, and I'm a specialist nurse and a grief counselor, and I specialize in healing your whole lifespan, like not only death, but also like divorce or maybe any kind of loss, trauma, illness, separations, anything that you would define as a loss in your life. So Inner Child Recovery is this book that I have recently published, so that was why I was invited here. So I'm very grateful for that. So I'm also a science journalist and an author on this subject. So I kind of focused all my energy on this grief recovery and all kinds of emotional recovery after hardships of different sorts.
Okay, great. Thank you. So let's talk a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about grief, because I know that is your area of specialty, and then we can move on and talk a little bit about inner child healing. Mm-hmm. I feel like there's a lot of misconception around grief, that it's only around like the loss of someone, like the physical loss of someone when someone passes on. But I feel like grief is way more expansive than that, isn't it? It's like you can have it in any situation. You could be, you could be in a toxic relationship with someone, and when you end that, it's the grief of them not being the person you always wanted them to be. Just, as an example. So do you want to talk a little bit about that and sort of what the misconceptions are out there?
Well, you're totally right. There are so many misconceptions, and maybe we could call it different kinds of definitions of grief, because if you have the definition that grief is always something that is followed by death, then you have that kind of definition. But I work from a broader perspective. I have a very broad definition of grief, and I would also like to change the word to from grief to emotional suffering, because then people understand, oh, I have a lot of emotional suffering. I didn't know that you could call it grief, and that you could do grief recovery work to feel better. So I think it's very good to change the word to find a broader definition so that you can work with all kinds of emotional suffering.
Yes, definitely, because there's more than one definition, isn't there? It can apply to various scenarios.
Yes.
So let's talk a little bit about inner child healing, or the inner child, because maybe not everyone that's listening has heard of the inner child. So maybe you could tell us a little bit first, what is the inner child?
Well, the inner child is something, it's a role that we all have. And we have many roles inside. Maybe you have heard about the book Internal Family System. And it's so interesting because we have so many roles inside, and sometimes they are in conflict with each other, and then we feel bad in some way, or some area of life is not working. So we all have this role, like an archetype, the inner child. And that is what is built up during our childhood, of course. So there is the very small child, the baby, and then different age spans, and very often the inner child is maybe wounded or suppressed, or some problems during the childhood. And I actually wrote a book about that too. I wrote this book, The Hidden Grief of Children, because during childhood there are so many small, low and medium intensity losses, like maybe you move from a different neighborhood and you lose the friends there, maybe you start school, maybe you're being bullied, maybe you have learning difficulties, and maybe the parents are divorcing or something. There can be so many losses during childhood that are maybe low and medium intensity, and they are also very hard for the inner child to deal with, because when we are children we don't have the tools to repair emotionally, and the parents, they don't have the tools either, so it's not really difficult.
It's not really something you're taught, is it?
No,
it's something that a journey you have to take on.
Yes.
An undertaking that you have to do yourself, isn't it?
Yes.
And normally, I don't know if you found this in your practice, this all sort of comes to a head in midlife.
Yes.
When you start to realize, hold on, there's something wrong. I'm in these patterns. Why can't I get out of these patterns? It's the same thing.
Yes.
And so this can stem down to your inner child and something that happened, and it goes back to your belief system, because our belief systems are established between the ages of 0 and 7, isn't it?
Exactly. During the whole childhood, we are just programmed, imprinted with all these belief systems, and most of it comes from our parents, but also from society overall. So we are very programmed, socially and emotionally programmed.
Yes, that's so true. And then, so do you have some examples of how, like, a wounded inner child might manifest itself in someone? So, just some like signs that someone who's listening who doesn't really know much about this topic could be like, oh yes, that sounds, I can relate to that.
Yeah, first of all, I want to say that it's also very interesting to learn more about attachment theories, because that is also very important to understand that it's not my fault. It's how I was brought up, and how my parents, what kind of capability did they have? Were they emotionally present or not? Were they attending my needs or not? What was missing? And this also affects the emotional suffering or well-being in adulthood. So it's important, both losses and attachment. And actually, yesterday I was performing distance healing, which I also do sometimes. And that is a very good example, because that the woman is more than 40 years old now, and she was abused as a child. And she was abused the whole of her life. And she was bullied in school, and she was abused at home, and she has had so many hardships. And I could see that her inner child was totally suppressed in her body. I could see that the inner child was living inside of her, but so pressed down. Very much like she couldn't even rise up. She couldn't stand up. She was like leaning down in the woman's body. And I could also see that sometimes the wounded inner child, this little girl, she was sometimes so very rebellious, like exploding sometimes, because she was so suppressed that sometimes she just wanted to explode. And she didn't want it, but she did it because she was so surprised, so she reacted. And this woman, so now even though she's more than 40 years old, she explodes sometimes, and people they think that it's immature, and it is, because it's her inner child reacting and showing, I'm here, I'm wounded, see me, help me. So it's the inner child is very present in all of us.
Yes. I'm so glad you brought up that example. That's such a great example of talking about, like, when the inner child is suppressed, there's that example out there of talking about, like, if you're trying to hold balloons underwater,
Yes.
and you're holding it, you can only hold it for so long, and eventually they pop up, don't they? And that's sort of the prime example of that happening. And we also tend to judge people a lot, don't we? So
Yes.
when people behave in certain ways, we're always like, what is wrong with you? And there's a great book out there that goes into this. I think it was co-authored by Oprah Winfrey, where they take the question back to say, it's not what is wrong with you, it's what's happened to you, to make you react in these ways. And like you say, it's the inner child that's been suppressed. And yes, it is immature, but that's because it's the inner child that's coming up. So that's a really great example. Thank you so much for that. So have you found in your practice that it's normal for the wounded inner child to become very prevalent in midlife? Because I know for myself that has been true, but it's curious to understand if that is the norm.
The inner child can pop up anytime during life. And sometimes it is when some other crisis is happening, then like the surface is withering down and everything can come out. So I can't say that it is in a special age. However, a wounded inner child will always be a nuisance. It will always cause some kind of emotional suffering, because maybe we feel like, no, I'm not seen, I want to be seen and acknowledged, I want to be respected. And if there are conflicts about that, maybe it is the inner child. And I teach that it's not always important to analyze where it comes from, all the emotional sufferings, because when I work with my clients, we always tend to the relationships that were present during the childhood, like parents and siblings and, all the close relationships from childhood. So then it's kind of a emotional decluttering process that we clean the childhood, and then the inner child gets more space.
Okay.
Yeah, and then of course, if some of my clients, they want to deepen their knowledge about what happened, because maybe they can't reach all the memories from childhood, and then we do hypnosis, because I'm a hypnotherapist also, and it's very easy to get in contact with your inner child. Even when we were babies, it's easy to do that during hypnosis. So that's no problem at all, and I do it on a video meeting, so we can do it all over the world.
Okay, so it's not confined to, it's not someone who has to come and sit in your office. No. It is something you can do remotely, which is, in this day and age, that's the name of the game, isn't it? Everything is now remote since COVID. So that was what was going to be one of my next questions, or one of my questions that I had, is sort of what kind of modalities or practices could you use to help heal the inner child?
Well, as I said, I prefer to work with the whole lifespan, and I have discovered during the last 20 years or so that I want to work first with grief recovery work, that is ordinary grief therapy on an emotional level. And then we do the emotional decluttering, as I said, and that is very profound and very deep healing that we perform them. And then if we want to, we can focus on the inner child also. And all my clients, I work with them for at least 6 months. So sometimes longer. I have had clients for up to 12 months. And that is because we also need, people want a quick fix, because we have carried this emotional suffering for so long. So we just want to get rid of it.
Yes.
But human beings are very slow when it comes to personal transformation. So we need to adapt slowly, and we need to do the grief recovery work like small steps at a time, very small steps, because otherwise there can be a kind of healing crisis. And I don't want to trigger a healing crisis, because that's not a nice and pleasant thing to experience.
Yes.
Yeah, so we do it step by step, very on a schedule. First grief recovery work, and then we check, have you done all these relationships connected to your childhood? And then we can go deeper and deeper. And after we have healed maybe 20 relationships, and all significant relationships, then we can go deeper and use hypnosis to reach the subconscious memories, because we are not conscious about everything that we have experienced. There is so many memories that we have suppressed. Yeah. And they are under a surface, and we can't reach them on our own.
Yes, this is something that's been fascinating me, because I had an experience last year where I did a breathwork session, and I had never done one before. And in that session, something profound came up for me, and it was this belief around shame. And in my 41 years, I had never, ever thought that I had that underlying. Like, it wasn't even, there was no, looking back, there was no, I didn't know, it wasn't something that seemed obvious to me in my life. And after that, I did a bit of research, and I was like, oh, wow, I can see how this has shown up in my life. But it's been laying there underneath the surface. There was no hint of it. Only until I went to go and do like a deep dive into the research that I could figure out, oh, wow, that's what that is. And I feel like a lot of people have that, those beliefs that are laying beneath the surface that are undiscovered or, unknown to them. So, there is some real deep work that needs to be done in order to uncover those. And would you do that with like hypnosis, or do you have your different techniques that you use to do that?
To reach the inner child, hypnosis is very, very, very good, and also it's a gentle method to reach the inner child. And when I work with, it's kind of a hypno healing session. I also give a distance healing at the same time, and you're almost awake, but you're not asleep, but you're so relaxed. But you can't talk. So we have a conversation, we have a dialogue, and I'm guiding the client to heal the relationship with the child from different ages. Yeah. And some losses or some events happened in a certain age, and then we go to that age, and then we go deeper and deeper and deeper. So very often we need about 3 sessions. Okay. Yeah.
And just for those listening around hypnosis, because I've done hypnosis a couple of times, but I know there are some people out there that are a bit afraid of hypnosis because they feel like they might be out of control. Yeah. And the best way that I can describe it is that when you go under hypnosis, it's like that moment when you lay down in your bed and you're just about to fall asleep. So you're super relaxed and you're just about to fall asleep, but you're still sort of aware of what's going on. That is sort of what the journey is. You can hear everything that's being said. You are still in control, and you can come out at any point. So if anyone's worried about that, that's, hypnosis is actually very, very gentle. And of course, it's always good to have, a practitioner that knows what they're doing, and that is, it comes highly recommended, I would say. Yeah. But I've always had very good experiences with hypnosis. So Just to clarify that for anyone who might be a bit afraid of that.
There are different methods, I must say. There are that kind of hypnosis for entertainers. Then when you do a lot of strange things on a scene, I don't do that kind of hypnosis. It's always just like me and the client, and very a lot of not any shaming or embarrassment. And the worst thing that can happen is that the client falls asleep.
And there's nothing wrong with that. That's just you being super relaxed.
That's okay.
Oh, lovely. So just to come back to what you said, so this journey, because I know there's a lot out there about, the inner child healing, and you can purchase this program and that program, but it's actually, from what you're saying, it's actually quite more intensive than that, and it's probably better to have like someone who's experienced in dealing with the inner child sort of taking you through that healing process if you want to have proper healing. And if someone wanted to do it on their own, is that something possible, or would you recommend to rather go through someone who's a practitioner like yourself?
Well, I think that every person must find their own way, and if they have an urge that I want help with my wounded inner child, then I believe that a teacher will appear. Now, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear.
Oh, yes.
So you can search where you live or wherever. And also there are many books about the wounded inner child and healing the inner child. So my book is only one of them. I think my book is very easy to follow, and there are many exercises you can practice on your own. And if that method is okay, then it's okay to contact me, and we can do sessions, of course. And I always recommend grief work first, grief recovery work, because it's the most gentle way. I like to work with people in a gentle and safe way. I don't like this it's nothing wrong with a healing crisis, but it is a lot of work.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think it's out of a long-term perspective, it's better to first do grief recovery work, and I have web courses and everything, so it's we can work with that first, and then I have inner child healing practices also, with hypnosis and distance healing and everything in a package.
So just going back to your book, you have some great techniques that you talk about in your book, very, all different techniques. I think you talk about meditation, mindfulness. If you've got someone who is, so we're talking to an audience here, a 40-something woman, women in today's day and age, we are so overwhelmed. We have to-do lists of to-do lists of to-do lists, and it's so hard to try and find that time during the day to try and, focus on yourself. What would you say is, which of those techniques would you recommend to someone who is very short on time but really wants to try and do something for themselves that will be beneficial? Something that they can do on a day-to-day basis that over time they'll see some progress for themselves.
Yeah, I understand. And most of my examples, then you can do it while working, or while, when you walk to the bus or to the subway or whatever. And so you do the mindful walk, and you can do breathing exercises while you're waiting in a queue. And you can play with your children if they have children, then you can play and do like mindfulness practices with the children. So I have these practices that you can combine them in your daily life seamlessly, and it's not like something that you need to do extra, because I understand that we are all overwhelmed in this age when we have work and children, family, everything. So I have really thought about it and wanted to give those examples where you can build it into what you're already doing.
Yeah, that's really great. I'm so glad that you mentioned that. Thank you so much. So let me ask you, so how did you get into this line of work?
Well, I have always been interested in difficult topics of life, and I've been a nurse since many years, since 1993.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I've been working with a lot of difficult situations at the emergency ward and the ambulance force, and in very difficult situations. But when we lost our daughter, then I felt like I really have to learn everything there is to learn about grief recovery work, because I was totally, what shall I say? I was in a million pieces. Like, it was so painful. And
Shattered.
I was shattered totally, and so I needed to build myself, piece myself together, all those million pieces, and I discovered, as I discovered all the methods that worked for me, I discovered that, okay, I was building up a new me. I was piecing myself together, but it was a new identity, a new person, and I felt stronger. I felt that I could be closer to my heart, and I could fill it up with more love than before. And it's such, in the midst of all that pain, it was so terrible. So I could just live like one breath at a time. It was so painful. And even if it was so painful, I could feel like, well, now I understand more about grief pain. Because it's not possible to be in a stronger pain than this. So now I can understand others better. So that will be a strength in the future.
Yeah, so it's
And I
definitely
think it is.
yeah, so it's
Yeah.
definitely you have that perspective. You can put
Yes.
yourself in
Yeah.
the other person's shoes because you've been there yourself, so you know exactly what they're
Yes.
going through.
And there are many kinds of high intense losses, like trauma and other kinds of losses. But losing a child it's profound, really.
Yes.
And many people are not going to recover because they don't have the tools, and they will suffer for the rest of their lives. And I think that is unnecessary.
Yes. Yeah,
It is
I
possible
can't.
to heal.
Yes. Yeah, I can't imagine losing a child. I mean, I've got two of my own, and the thought for me is just the thought of it is overwhelming. But it is good to know that there are people out there like yourself who can help you, sort of guide you out of that process, and that there is hope for you at the end. You know, you can rebuild yourself and become a new version of yourself. Although that it's not to take away from the person you've lost, but definitely there is hope, Okay, so so do you want to tell us a little bit more about your book? So we're going to be doing the book in a child recovery. We're doing this next month in the book club, which I'm really excited to do. So is there anything that you'd like to tell us about the book from yourself, from your own perspective?
Free today.
Lovely.
I have set up the promo days on Amazon so that you can get this the ebook, not the paperback, but the ebook is for free now for a couple of days more until the 30th of April.
Okay, great. Fantastic.
Yeah. So, and then if you register through the link that Odelia is going to put out there somewhere in your community, then you also get 2 bonuses, and that is one guided meditation for your inner child. So only listening to that a few times will heal some of your problems with your inner child. So that I think it's a very good meditation. And also, if I get a review, I would be so grateful. So I will give from my time 60 minutes a session one-on-one.
Oh, that's amazing. Wow, that is so generous. So I'll put the link of all of these wonderful bonuses, I'll put them into the show notes so that anyone who wants to take advantage of these wonderful bonuses, that you can just click on the links. And tell me, what made you want to write this book? So you did, I know you've written another book, but what made you want to write this book? What was your inspiration?
Well, I write about all kinds of emotional recovery work. The book I'm working on now is complex PTSD recovery. So I'm going to write many books, and all of them are about grief recovery, but from different perspectives.
Okay, great. Well, I'm looking forward to your book about complex PTSD, because this is something I'm currently interested in and been reading about, and I think it's a great topic for a future show. So really excited. So keep me posted about that. I'd love to get my hands on that once you're done. I really love your writing. Your book is amazing. I found it helpful for myself, especially doing the exercises. I'm definitely on my own inner child healing journey, and I found it really helpful. I know there's a lot of resources out there, but I found this one to be really, really good, and it's an easy read. It's not difficult to do. It's not difficult to read. It's an easy read, which is always great, especially when you're trying to heal and manage a household and do a million other things at the same time.
Thank you. I'm so happy that you're appreciating the book.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's a beautiful book, and that's why I wanted to invite you onto the podcast, because I thought it was such a great book, and I'd love to share that with my listeners, because I found it quite profound for myself. So is there anything about your own inner child healing journey that you'd like to share, like any antidotes or something that you can share with the audience?
Well, I have been under hypnosis many times, and very often you end up in the childhood, some different ages. I had a good family, and on the surface everything was perfect, but I was suffering still because I wasn't seen and acknowledged for who I was different than my mother and father and my sister. They were like the same kind of person. So I was very odd. And I also found that the last session I did was very, it unfolded problems that I didn't know about. And because I found memories from when I was a very small baby, I can't have been maybe weeks or a month old, and I was left alone, and that has put a lot of scarring in me. It has been so difficult to carry this, because I didn't remember that I was left alone as a baby, in the dark, and I was hungry. And when I remembered this, I could understand that, okay, my mother had to go out. Maybe she was out 5 minutes or 10 minutes. It's nothing really, but for a baby, it's a question about survival. I had this feeling that I'm going to die because my parents, they left me.
Yes.
So when I unfolded those memories within, then I could heal one more piece of the puzzle of me.
Amazing. That's
Yeah.
amazing. And that goes back to sort of attachment theory, doesn't it? It also comes back to attachment theory, which you
Yes.
mentioned earlier. And there's a lot of research out there now about attachment theory. So that's also good to understand in this process of healing. Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for joining us today on the show. It's really been wonderful talking to you. We'll leave everything in the show notes, so people can get a copy of this amazing book that you've written, and they can reach out to you with these bonuses, which I think is really, really generous. So yeah, thank you so much for coming onto the show today.
Thank you so much. I
you.
loved being here, and I would love to come back to talk about other topics.
Okay, great. Well, yeah, definitely. We'd love to have you back on the show. Okay, so thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.